Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Enough to Keep Going podcast. This is episode number 165 for October 15th, 2020. I am your host, Osiris Prime. And much like the newly announced Apple iPhone, yes, we are missing some things here tonight. We're not missing a power cord or a home button. No, we're missing a couple of our hosts tonight. Actually, not missing. They're just not scheduled. Just trying to be dramatic. DBQ and Swiss Guard would not be here tonight, but I do have the tech wizard, the Mr. Agasicles. Hopefully you're not missing anything tonight here. And we can, seems like we started off fairly easily and quickly tonight, so.
Yeah, you don't have to add any salt or spice to that. You can just, I'm just me. Yeah, I'm good. I'm here.
He's here. All right, so this is our deep dive episode where we jump into the news of the past 2 weeks. Excuse me, gaming news. We got a bunch of topics. Actually, we got quite a few topics here that we're going to go through. We're going to start off with the much dreaded console wars, and then jump into some updates and changes to a bunch of free-to-play, battle royale, multiplayer games that are out there currently or may not be out there, as we'll see here in a little bit. First off, we're going to start with Microsoft. Microsoft deals with GameStop. That's right. They entered, or I should say GameStop entered into a partnership with Microsoft for a multi-year strategic partnership. So real quickly, I'll kind of go down, this is an article from Authority. Is that how you say that website? AI Authority. And I'll kind of just go through kind of the top level stuff that they're kind of planned out here in the announcement here. So this is includes enterprise and commercial stuff that they'll be doing. So they have stuff like Microsoft Surface that they're going to put on. I think they've already actually started using the Microsoft Surface in all the stores, in the GameStop stores, the physical stores, allowing more mobility for their not customers, but their employees. We're going to have on the back end, we'll have in-store solutions for on the Dynamic 365. So kind of like the Office 365, they're going to add Teams to all the stores and stuff like that, and just kind of back server kind of stuff. And also they're going to be essential for the Xbox All Access. Not really a product. I guess it's kind of a layaway, I guess, type of thing. Correct me if I'm wrong, yes, please. Where it's kind of a month to month.
Yeah, it's a little. I tend to differentiate it a little bit from a layaway because I think I mentioned a couple holiday episodes ago that I was very surprised to find out layaway still existed because I was in Walmart picking up a new monitor and somebody came by to pick up their layaway. So like layaway as we knew it when we were kids growing up, which the whole thing about I buy a thing, you hold it for me, right? And I pay you some, increment each week or month until I pay the whole thing, and then I can come into the store and I can pick it up. That still exists. So this is not layaway, although there is, I think their plan has like 3 to 5 different variants, and as kind of a standard layaway is one of those. But the Xbox All Access is basically buying a console kind of like you buy your phone. So you get the box. You also get the, if I remember correctly, you get the Game Pass Ultimate tier, which is Xbox Game Pass, Xbox Game Pass on PC, Games with Gold, and Xbox Gold. So you get the multiplayer, online participation as well for $25 a month, I think, roughly for a Series X, and I believe $19.99 for a Series S. But in this variant, in the Xbox All Access model, you get everything, either in the store or shipped to you or whatever. And just like your phone, in X period of years, like if they come out with an Xbox Series V, at the 2-year point, you can take your Xbox Series X if you've paid it off, and trade it in and get the V right on the service plan. And I'm pretty sure, just like a phone, you could also opt. Let's say it came out in 18 months, and you still had 6 months to go. I'm pretty sure they would let you just pay off the 6 months immediately and get the new thing.
Nice. And you had also mentioned kind of in our chats too. It was kind of a, I guess I don't want to say a big deal, but more of just, hey, this is Microsoft and GameStop. I mean, they're gonna partner and get the consoles out there and all that, this and that. This is kind of goes into Microsoft's kind of ecosystem for Azure, correct?
Yeah. So as far as I read, and kind of reading between the tea leaves, this is based on some of the other mentions of services that GameStop was getting out of it. This indicates to me that this is a Microsoft Enterprise Services sale, and so there's a bundle of stuff that you get, and there's kind of a standard package that they come in with when they're putting you on their enterprise hosted services. You get and that generally is the Office 365 hosted, and so like for instance, my company went through this recently. All of our local client installs of Microsoft Office were all migrated to cloud variants, which principal among those meant our AD, our Active Directory, our identification and access management, that profile moved off-prem, right, and went to the cloud. So language in this deal tells me that that's what's going on, and what I also firmly believe in terms of, there was mention in another article about, and there was also an alignment where Microsoft is supposed to help them digitize and carry into their future business. Kind of sounds to me like what they're doing is they're migrating all of their stuff from whatever it's on now, whether it's AWS or a data center or whatever. They're migrating that all to enterprise services, which rides on Azure. And in addition to that, DBQ dropped something into our chat actually just recently this evening, right before we went live, and indicated that there's also an arrangement between Microsoft and GameStop where GameStop, if they sell you a box, the ID associated with that box, when you go and purchase something from the store, that association carries through with it so that Microsoft can the ID was always associated with the box, but that ID, that hardware identification, that fingerprint, will also be used for Microsoft to tally up, in a casino machine, ka-ching, every time you make a digital purchase. GameStop is going to get credit for that. So now GameStop is invested in selling you a console not only for the short-term immediate gain of $399 and whatever their margin is on that, right? But the long-term investment of hoping that you procure additional stuff through that nets them revenue as well. The thing that makes me a little curious is the additional detail around that. Does that mean microtransactions? Does that mean DLC? Does that mean expansion packs? That type of thing. And that's up to my threshold of where things are okay and good. Where things get a little muddy and seedy and potentially start to slide down the hill of behaviors that I would prefer to not see. If GameStop is getting a piece of microtransactions, right, like a Fortnite skin, right? Does GameStop, because remember, GameStop's problem is that they do shady stuff, right? Not necessarily, and not even necessarily things that are bad. It's the way that they message it, and they very often come across as incredibly petty. For instance, I talked about this on another podcast I'm on a few nights ago, which is I just recently traded in my Xbox and all my PlayStations. Those boxes, I didn't trade in my HDMI cable or my controllers because I'm using my controllers to game on PC, and I'm not going to trade you in HDMI cables because I don't know what HDMI cable is directly associated with that PlayStation. And I use my HDMI cables because I'm a streamer. So their structure for handling that is, we'll take it, but we're going to sell you a used controller because we can't take the thing incomplete. So to make it complete, if you want to make the trade, we'll go ahead and sell you a controller and then immediately take it back. And we'll sell you an HDMI cable and immediately take it back. Part of that I'm sort of okay with. But a used PlayStation 4 controller at GameStop is $53. brand new, they're only like 65, right? So I'm like, that's not. I mean, $53 for a used controller, right? Like, I mean, I would expect to pay $53 for a controller that somebody literally took off the shelf, went home and used for a day and brought back, right? But I'm sure that controller had been used for more than a day, right? And then the HDMI cable was $20. So right there, they charged $73, right, to essentially make the trade. And I'm like, really? This is really what you guys? Again, as I mentioned on the other podcast, I didn't really care about how much money I made out of it. It was more just I just wanted it out of my house and I needed to declutter. But it's just that type of pettiness that's unnecessary. You know, I'm like, look, if I mean, I'm trading the console in. I'm asking you guys to give me store credit. I'm clearly going to spend the credit at your store. So there's an upside for you if you're not petty with me about like either way you make out, right? If you don't take that as much off of my trade, you still get that money back because I'm still going to spend it in your store, right? Like I don't know. So anyway, good job on Microsoft. I feel like they're, this is I think this is an altruistic kind of arrangement, kind of like when they, gave Apple a cash infusion, back in the 90s, shortly after Steve Jobs came back when that company was foundering and looked like they weren't going to make it. I just hope it doesn't flip around to the other side and they don't allow themselves to get, because so many things happen at the vendor account executive level, right? So not at Phil Spencer's level, but like once the big deals are made, things get filtered down to like who your individual account. I hope, there's not a lot of corruption and seediness between, account executives and people who are on the small end handling deals, doing things that are shady. And I just hope it stays on the up and up.
Yeah, I was reading that. I was actually just reading that article. I hadn't get a chance to read it beforehand from DBQ, and yeah, it does look like it does include the DLC, as long as it's bought from the Xbox store. So I guess that makes sense, sort of. But I don't. I mean, yeah.
Well,
I guess
see,
because you are buying DLC from the store, technically. I suppose when you're on that console, I guess.
Right, but there's the window for GameStop to start doing stuff shady, right? So the way that reads is, okay, so if I sell you an Xbox at GameStop, I get a cut of anything you buy on that Xbox, right? What's my incentive? So you go and you get Fortnite, right? This deal includes DLC, right? Well, I guess, yeah, right. So if you're a Fortnite multi-platform player, right? Where do I want you to buy your skins? I want you to buy your skins and your stuff on the Xbox. I don't want you to go on the PC and buy that stuff.
Yeah.
Right? Because you won't buy it through the Microsoft store. So what do I do as GameStop to incentivize you to buy that stuff on your Xbox? Right? There's lots of shady stuff I could do. Right? I could offer you bonus points on our goofy card plus power pack plan or whatever the GameStop thing is now, right? Or I could offer you additional money on a trade-in, right? Or I can start issuing you Xbox, like Microsoft Store credit, right? But maybe I'd start carrying like Xbox cards, right? And that's like a way, right? So I don't really care. So then I go, well, okay, I don't really care if I give you a GameStop card or I give you an Xbox card, right? As long as you spend that money on your Xbox, right? And buy their skins. So I don't know.
How does that work though? Because are they taking what would have been Microsoft's cut then, or because?
Well, right. So there's a whole.
I don't understand like what the video, like the publisher or the developer would be like. Whoa. How are you taking this money? So I'm assuming it's coming out of Microsoft. Like what would have been Microsoft's cut?
So
I'm thinking
you're talking about for the DLC.
Yeah, for the DLC. Yeah.
Yeah. That's what I would. Yes, that's what I would. I would imagine you have a deal with. So in the event where I'm going to buy an expansion pack, the deal with the publisher is the deal. So they're going to get their 70%, and then out of the 30%, right? I'm gonna share that revenue with GameStop if that Xbox originated from a GameStop sale. Yep.
Okay. I guess that's where I was just kind of a little bit confused. All right, that makes sense. All right. All right. Anything else on the GameStop MS partnership? All right, let's jump over to Sony now. And my website will come up here. We have Spider-Man Miles Morales gets a PS5 gameplay trailer and a release date. Yes, it's coming out November 12th, same day as the PS5. Once again, you can either buy the standalone game. We've cleared that up finally. Spider-Man Miles Morales edition, or you can get the Ultimate, and that's for $49.99. Or you can get the $69.99 Miles Morales Ultimate Edition, which also comes with the remastered Spider-Man game from PS4 release, original PS4 release. So they released some new gameplay trailer. From what the article I was reading here on The Verge, it looks like it's, it looks pretty much like the other Spider-Man. Obviously, Miles Morales has a little bit different power set, so he's got like a stinger and some other things he can do more than Spider-Man can do. But they're saying kind of it's more or less acrobatic swing through the city kind of a thing, quick time events with the bigger kind of cinematic moments that you find kind of a la Call of Duty or like Uncharted or something like that. But yeah, I think I could have sworn they'd already said it was going to be released with the PS5. At least I thought it was. Maybe that was just the rumor we were hearing beforehand. But yeah, I guess we got maybe it's the official date.
Yeah, I think they'd always said it was a launch title, but publishers could play with that date, and if it releases within 30 to 90 days of the console, then it's you're legally within the launch window. So I think this is just confirmation of the hard date that it's coming out.
Okay, the legal jargon that they like to play with. All right, so and then also this was coming out for PlayStation 4 also, so both these editions at the same price points. So just trying to, I thought there was an update to here, but I think they were just saying they were updating the article. So any other comments on this one?
Yeah. This is. I mean, I'm gonna rant about this on another night. So there's some upside. There are a lot of good news things that came along with this. Miles will appear not as proficient in web swinging as Peter Parker does because he's a new hero. So he all of like those famous kind of Spider-Man like poses that the comic book character is iconic for, like the hanging from the ceiling, the sitting on top of a gargoyle in New York on a skyscraper, kind of how he swings when he swings through at low altitude and kind of is swinging through traffic. But he's on a web, but he's right next to cars that are on there. Like all that kind of stuff will look different when Miles does it because Miles is kind of clumsily trying to become accustomed to his powers. Ray tracing obviously is being implemented. There's like as you mentioned, there are different things with his power sets. There are surprise villains that haven't been announced yet that are going to appear. Peter Parker will appear, but won't be a playable character as far as we know. I guess part of my problem with this is, and I gotta figure something out. I don't know whether it is my Twitter feed or something I've done, but in general, the last 2 months, right, what I've seen in my social media is the Sony acolytes and their glomming onto everything as a thing to use to beat the Xbox down. And I've seen none of these people that group claims are Xbots and blindly follow Phil Spencer and whatever he says. I don't see that in my feed, so I don't know, and so I don't see the other group being as toxic about like little announcements like this, in their effort to kind of drain the fun out of everything. So, most pertinent is, somebody who mentioned, now that we know all of this, what do the people have to say that called Spider-Man Miles Morales DLC? And I asked the question. I was like, the perspective that this is DLC essentially has nothing to do with the graphical fidelity of it or how comic book accurate it renders Miles Morales, right? It has to do with the fact that the gameplay is 7 to 10 hours, right? And Sony is charging you $50 for that, if you buy it standalone. Right.
Yep.
And what is it if you bought Spider-Man before? I mean, it's so convoluted now that I don't even remember exactly how it works. But the whole point of it is that it has nothing to do with how great the game is, right? From my perspective, as a person who works in software development, it's because I am very comfortable with saying I am almost absolutely certain within the 99th percentile that the level of effort that was levied to produce Spider-Man Miles Morales is not 83% of the level of effort that was levied to produce Spider-Man, the full-size game. That is what you were being charged. You were being charged 83% of the cost of Spider-Man. And so what doesn't sync up with me, or what doesn't true up with me, is that I haven't heard anything or seen anything that makes me feel like the price being asked is equivalent to the level of effort that goes into the game, and whatever. I mean, and it could simply be we're trying to get financially healthy and we're trying to clear more margin with Miles Morales, right? That, or we're taking the R&D and amortizing that over the sales of the console and taking the normal hit that we normally do on hardware. We're trying to make some of that money back in this generation by upscaling how much we charge, right? Lots of things could rationalize, right, why that is. I don't have a problem with Sony and its products. I have a problem with the way Sony communicates and the way that they are not transparent about the things that concern me. Now, lots of those things don't concern other people. I have problems with that. You mentioned the iPhone. Lots of people buy lots of Apple stuff and never ask any questions, right? I have a problem with that, right? I buy Apple products. I like them. I buy Sony products. I like them. My DSLR, my mirrorless camera of choice, is a Sony product. I've bought lots of PlayStations and lots of PlayStation stuff, but I don't ever do that blindly, and I don't ever ask questions, and they're not free from being able to be critiqued, right? And by the same token, I don't necessarily accept, the group that takes a 7 to 10 hour game experience, and because it has ray tracing and recreates a fan favorite character, that justifies the $50 price tag, and makes it more than DLC, or at least somehow makes it more than Uncharted Lost Legacy, which was the same thing. Lost Legacy was a great experience, but it was 7 to 10 hours. I liked it because I got it through PlayStation Plus, right? But it didn't meet my requirements for going out and purchasing that game at $40 or whatever it was they charged for it. So, yeah, sorry.
No, that's all right. Oh, you forgot it has faster load times too, and DualSense controller haptic feedback. So that's going to bring up the price, I assume. Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, I'm trying to think back on The Witcher's big, like their last DLC that they had. I think that was, it was fairly large, and I think it was like $20 maybe. I can't remember what that last big one was.
I mean, did they even? I don't remember what the structure of the. I don't think have you ever paid for Witcher expansion content? I thought that the big thing about The Witcher 3 was that everything that's come out after that has been entirely delivered to people who purchased that game.
Oh, maybe it was. I thought it was just kind of the smaller stuff, like, because I know they had like smaller, like, I don't know, just like side quests and stuff that came out, and but I thought the larger ones maybe you actually had to pay for it, but I might be mistaken. That maybe everything was free, but I mean,
I'll check it while you're asking. But of course, the example we have is most recently. Oh no, it says that at one point they charged, well, at least on PlayStation they charged $25 for an expansion pack. But of course, most recently, what we did was, what was it? If you had, I can't remember what it was, but there, if you had purchased The Witcher, if you had purchased any version of The Witcher 3, then you got it free on PC. You could get the PC version for free.
Yeah, I think that was through one. That wasn't Epic, was it? No, I don't think it was.
I don't know. I'll fact check that too while you roll on to the next story.
All right. We'll jump to the next one while you look at that one. Jump back to Microsoft real quick for their clarification on backwards compatibility for Xbox Series S. That's S's and Sam. So basically, I guess there's still kind of confusion whether the S is still going to give the same kind of oomph or big oomph, upgrade oomph for games, backwards compatibility games, like for 360 and even the original Xbox, and even like some of the Xbox One games. And in the article here from Game Informer, they pretty much say, yeah, I mean, it's you're still going to get the bump up. Let's see, I'm trying to look for the thing here. You'll get the full power CPU, GPU, and SSD for on the Xbox S and X from each console. Obviously, the X is going to do full 4K quality graphics and resolution and all that. And for the Series S, it's targeting more 1440p. Okay, I mean, it's fine, I guess. I mean, I still don't. I mean, they kind of have like side by side comparisons here. I mean, it's, for me at least, it's not like a super big deal. I mean, I don't even have. I got a 4K monitor. But it's. I mean, I don't really, unless you're going to be sitting there with like a monitor or TV that has like both resolutions. I mean, it's not going to be like a super big deal, at least for me. To me, it is. I know some people, like the big, they want the, the best and the greatest out there, but they do say, it's still going to deliver the same, well, almost the same, except for the resolution and stuff like that. Improve, you get improved frame rates and stuff like that. So they just kind of, I guess. I didn't even know there's still a question out there about the backwards compatibility. I mean, I thought they had explained it. Maybe not. I hadn't just been following it as closely as other things about the S and X, Series S and X.
Yeah, it all stems from this, and I don't think. I mean, I trust however Microsoft articulates it. I strongly suspect that this label that's cropped up and gone around that talks about things in terms of the Xbox X Series version of the game and the Xbox Series S version of the game, and the Xbox One X version of the game and the Xbox One S version of the game. I don't think those things really exist. I don't think that they're actually for discrete versions, because they sell the game and they don't know what you're going to play it on. What I suspect is that, like most other things in software, I suspect they just sell you the game, and there's code in the game that detects the hardware you're running it on, and enables the features, right? Invokes the features that are applicable to your hardware. So they don't, the Xbox One X stuff is in modules of the code that are not traversed and not invoked when the game is running on a 1S, right? Which is not any different than when you run an application on the iPad, it doesn't invoke the stuff that is specific to the iPhone, right? Or you're running a thing on the iPhone, 11 Pro Max, right? And it doesn't render and do things that are applicable to the smaller version of the phone, right? So part of it stems from that, is that people have it. I think people who are not familiar with software have it in their heads incorrectly that there are different versions of the game running around, which again I don't think is the case. Now maybe you could knit threads or whatever about like what version is downloaded when you take a 1S and buy that variant on the store, and maybe it downloads 5 less gigabytes than the Series X, and you interpret that as a different version. Again, I think it's just pulling from the repository the things that are applicable. It's not. I still wouldn't necessarily think of it as a different version. So I think people are getting very wrapped around the axle about that, when, as you mentioned, it's not that big a deal. To me, here's the key thing about the next gen version of Xbox. It has code in it that automatically detects what is the best feature set to run on the display that you're running on. So if you enable it, it will figure out what the best resolution is, whether HDR should be enabled, what the refresh rate should be, and I don't know necessarily how it's handling frame rate, right? So on PC, you have an option to enable VSync, which locks your frame rate to the refresh rate of the monitor, right? So there's no point in exercising a GPU so that it's trying to render 90 frames when the maximum you're ever going to see are 60, right? Because your monitor refresh rate is 60 hertz. So, right. But if you decouple those things, the PC allows those things to be decoupled, so the GPU can be over here flipping out trying to run 90 frames per second, but only 60 are being rendered on your screen. So you enable VSync, or you enable, lots of games have frame rate locking now. We're going to play Call of Duty after this, and it's one of the games that has that, right? So that you don't over-exercise your GPU unnecessarily trying to render frames that you're never going to see. So I think that it auto-detects that as well, and it may be a matter where consoles automatically lock VSync. I don't know for certain, but the point is that maybe not at first, but I would strongly advocate that like after you've run the console for a couple of months and you get a chance to verify that you're getting the best possible picture and the right toggles enabled, based on where you're running the box, that after that you just put that thing in auto and just let it figure out how to render the best display, right? And don't monkey with it. Just let it do what it's supposed to do.
Yeah, I mean, I do that a lot. Yeah, and as far as the frame rates, it just says that it'll almost double the frame rates for the older games on both systems, on both the X and S. So higher frame rates, more stable frame rates. So it's a smoother experience, but it doesn't go into detail, at least in this article. So,
hey, so can we go ahead and clean up those last tidbits from the last conversation before we go to the next one?
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Hey, so The Witcher 3 DLC, at least now, I don't know if this has always been the case, is being sold in both the Xbox Store and the PlayStation Store for $24.99. Those expansion packs, Heart of Stone and Blood and Wine. Heart of Stone is about 10 hours in length. Blood and Wine is about 20 hours in length. So one of them at least is about as long as Miles Morales is. And the other one is twice as long. Again, the publisher itself of that product refers to those as expansions, right? So again, I'm a little not fully approving of the band of patriots that are running around waving the flag, insisting that Miles Morales is something more than an expansion. Sure, it's packaged differently, it's all whatever, right? But at the end of the day, that game does not have as much content, right? As far as I understand, as far as what's been messaged, that game does not have as much content as another similarly priced product or game would normally have. And so I struggle to understand why it should be priced nearly twice as much as another similarly sized product is. And I personally don't feel that next generation enhancements justify nearly doubling the cost, right, of a product like that.
Yeah, and even in that article from before, they had mentioned that while it does look good on the PS5, I mean it didn't look like that much greater. So I mean, you take that as what you will.
Yeah.
It could be the Marvel price tag too. I mean, kind of slapped on there. But I don't know.
I mean, they've paid for their license, right? I mean, like I don't know.
That's true.
I don't know. And just to clear it up, so what CD Projekt Red did is I think last year or earlier this year, anyone who had previously purchased The Witcher 3 on any other platform, any other digital storefront on PC, and anyone who had bought it on Xbox One or PlayStation 4 got a PC version that you could collect from Good Old Games for free.
Good Old Games. Yeah, I knew it was one of those services. I didn't think it was Epic, but I just threw it out there.
Yeah, I know, and we often forget. I meant to mention this last week or a couple weeks ago. We often forget CD Projekt Red owns Good Old Games. So.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I don't know if I ever knew that actually.
Yeah, I don't know if they. I've got to go back and research. I don't know if they bought it at one point or if they actually started it. But this is. I mean, this essentially. I mean, it's a thing to keep an eye on because this essentially makes CD Projekt Red kind of like Valve was in the early days, right? They're a game developer who's also a publisher who also runs a digital storefront. So
yeah, service out there.
Yep, and yep.
All right. So let's keep on Microsoft here for a little bit, or one more story at least, and we have the October 2020 update of their the dashboard has come out. Actually, well, just kind of their October update in general, but it actually brings up the new dashboard that they'll be using not only on the Xbox One and Xbox One S and X, but also the Series X and S. So they've kind of looks the same to me as the kind of the last major update. They've just kind of cleaned it up a little, like when you're going through the different storefronts and stuff, the kind of like the boxes around everything kind of have like a more rounded edge. It looks a little cleaner. I was looking at it a little bit earlier today, and I think I might even noticed it last night a little bit, but I was kind of just jumping in and out of games, not really going through the UI itself. But it seemed to be a little bit faster than it was before. Definitely in the storefront when I was going through the storefront today. Speaking of Call of Duty, I was kind of looking at the Black Ops beta. I was going to try to download it, but I can't right now. But anyways, but kind of just flipping through, like even just kind of flipping through that page for Call of Duty, if you go through the trailer, go through like the information and go down maybe a little bit further to something like the clips and stuff, which I don't think there were any right now, but it does seem a little bit snappier, a little bit faster. It's not as laggy as it was before. It would kind of like sit there and kind of just like, you see the little spinny wheel, and I'd kind of just be sitting there just going through just that one page. It's like, come on, man, it should be pretty quick, but this does seem a little bit quicker. Then have a new sign-in experience, which I'm not really sure what that was, and I don't think I actually saw that. I have it like where I have to put in a code to sign in. So I mean that just popped up as usual. So I'll have to look at that a little bit more closer. Excuse me. New languages, support for new languages, and you'll also be able to do profile themes, which is kind of nice. You could always kind of change like the background and stuff, but you kind of had to do that individually. So now you could just do it all at once with specific things like the Xbox Series S or Game Pass themes, which they have now. But I'm assuming they'll throw up more things up there as time goes on, especially when the Series S and X come out. So I don't know if you had it. Well, I guess you haven't had a chance because you don't have an Xbox anymore. But anything out that kind of jumps out at you here?
No,
I mean redesign.
No, I mean I think it's good. Actually, there was. I think this is the second update. So I think a performance update hit before I got rid of mine, and I was able to see an uptick in performance. And then I think the actual. So I think there was some earlier seeding that enabled some of this stuff, and so some of the faster performance had already been delivered. And then I think the actual UI change was delivered later. But yeah, I mean it's good. I mean. I don't know.
It's good.
I mean, I would hope. I mean, the one thing that I did say before, in the lead up to these consoles launching is, I would hope that the UIs and the operating system were improved. There are things. It's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. There were things that the PlayStation operating system still did that drove me a bit batty, and Call of Duty is doing them now as well. But on PlayStation, my infamous problem with that was, you buy a game, you download a game, you get a little notification in your notification menu in your tray that says game installed, right? So I wake up early in the morning, I buy a new game, I download it, I come home in the evening, I boot up my PlayStation 4, I would look at it, it says game installed, I'm like, great, I'm ready to go. I eventually learned to not plan to stream like a night that I was doing these things at the same time, because invariably you pull the game up and it immediately goes, need to download a patch. And I'm like, don't tell me that the game is installed, because the game's not installed, right? It needs to pull down a patch. So you pull down the patch. The third infuriating thing was then you start the game up and it tells you Destiny 2 or whatever has downloaded a patch but hasn't installed it. And I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. So I would hope and think that those quality of life things and that friction, I would expect and pray that both companies. Again, that's not an experience that I would have on Xbox. That was specific to PlayStation. I hope Sony cleans that up. The problem I will throw at Microsoft is this whole thing, and maybe you've seen it, but it's part of it's the type of consumer I am. Let's say I put 40 games right on my hard drive, right? It used to be in the early days of the Xbox One, updates would just come down, and they would, I wouldn't have to monkey with them. At some point, they started queuing them, and so if you buy a new game, right, what would happen is I'd buy a new game, I'd drop out of the store, I'd go over into settings and into the download queue, and then I find out I've got like 10 updates that are queued but haven't downloaded yet, plus the new game is there. And then I gotta go in there and manually farkle with the things and resort the priorities and all that stuff. And I'm like, just do like the Xbox 360 did, man, and just like automatically down. Like, I don't understand why you give me the option to automatically download the updates if you're not going to do that. And then there's this weird thing in the last iteration of the Microsoft OS where there were updates and queued, and I was like, well, how are those two things different? Right? Why do I have updates that aren't queued, and why do I have a queue that doesn't include all my updates? Like, they should be the same. So I don't know. I hope they're both getting better.
Yeah, no, that the update in the queue is still there. And the same thing you're talking about, I fight with it constantly. Like, I don't understand. Sometimes it updates some games, like
right,
almost automatically. Fortnite and Rocket League update like automatically, pretty much. And I could see maybe, yeah, okay, maybe they kind of spaced it out throughout the day because they obviously didn't want to kill their servers and stuff like that. But it's like, dude, I've gone through like 2 or 3 days where I just had the same like 6 updates in there. Like, why aren't these other ones going through then? I don't understand.
Right.
And the other thing with Microsoft too, their downloads are so slow. It's not even funny.
Really, because I find so the way that I would see it between the both of them, just so you have a point of comparison, though, to me the individual PlayStation downloads were significantly slower than my Xbox downloads ever were. But I would say over time, I would see the Xbox downloads were much more naggy than the PlayStation. In other words, I would go to my PlayStation and I would have like maybe 2 or 3 updates. Now, admittedly, part of the problem with the PlayStation 1 is I think by and large the PlayStation 1s don't. No, because some would download even not on demand. The PlayStation 1s just, I don't know how to describe it. The way that they came down were just different. Like it's the same thing like you mentioned on Microsoft. Some would come down and it wasn't really, it was kind of inexplicable which ones it picked and chose were going to be automatically updated. But I will say, but unless what I would say about the PlayStation 1 is, unless it was the game that I was playing, by and large, I didn't have to monkey with it, right? Like, I would just see a notification that said, oh, MLB has updated, and I'll be like, oh, okay, great, so that update will be there the next time I go play it. But the problem with, as you mentioned, the problem with the Xbox One, I just felt like every stinking day I went in there and like 10, 15, 18 different apps, right, would need to update. They weren't all automatically queued. I'd be concerned or bothered about whether or not that was impacting performance. If I didn't let them download and I started playing another game, then I didn't feel necessarily confident that it would clear that download queue by the time I got to, like, so it was putting a little too much manual stuff in my windshield that I would have preferred.
Yeah. Well, now that I think about it, I'm kind of scared with the next generation because now they're telling us you can do parts of games. So, maybe you just want the story mode or you just want the multiplayer mode. Okay, that's fine. But I mean, is it going to be smart enough to say, hey, just download this? Or, I mean, just download the whole game and then I have to go and delete it? What I don't want. I mean,
right.
So,
well, that's historically been the problem, right? So Call of Duty, for instance, in the past, while I was on hiatus from Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 up until present day, often I would download the game and before they allowed you to download the pieces, I would download the whole thing, but I would really only play the single player. But yet every day the multiplayer thing was constantly updating in the background, even though I never played it. So yeah, it'll be interesting. I don't know.
Yeah, hopefully they have it sorted out. All right. Speaking of downloading, let's jump over to PlayStation right now. So we had a report here. This is from YourGamer.net. PlayStation 5 lets you upload voice chats to Sony and report your awful party mates. So I guess this came about. There's an update, actually, I guess, to the PS4 for their kind of just software updates. And I guess the messaging didn't come out as well as they expected. So people thought like Sony was like spying on people in their party and the party chats. But what is happening is you can actually say, like playing Call of Duty or whatever, and, people are being toxic, or, Fortnite and stuff. People are being toxic. You can actually record record that audio conversation and upload it and report their abuse, which I guess that's kind of cool. I mean, it's a little bit more than just typing in, like in Fortnite when there's someone's being a jerk or whatever, and you have to go in there and type through, just type it in instead of and not really having any evidence, I guess. I mean, I suppose I still don't know how that even works, and this is not just Fortnite but any other game where you do that. I mean, is the amount of reports they get in, is it, I mean, how do they actually go? I guess they can probably go in the back end maybe and see that stuff, but I was always kind of intrigued in how that worked. But this seems a little bit, hey, I'm going to sit there and record, this past like 30 seconds. So it doesn't really say how long of a download you can do, at least not that I can see here. I'm assuming it'll probably kind of like when you kind of record a video clip, maybe there'll be different amounts.
Yeah, I would assume, unless they separate it in the UI and the code, I would assume it winds up being coupled to your share config settings. And so on the PlayStation, your share config settings, you can go in and tell it to I mean, you can put it in various modes. One of those modes is where it continuously records a snapshot in the background, and you can set the duration or length of that to I think the low end might be 15 minutes, and I think there's a 1 hour increment. There's one other one, but I can't remember what it is. So basically, you could do a thing where it's always recording in the background, and you can then decide whether or not to keep that recording or not. But then there's another mode you can put it in. On the PlayStation 4, it was by double tapping the share button to immediately start a recording. But same thing, it would, that config setting of what. No, actually. So in that mode, you double tap it to start it, and it keeps recording until you tell it to stop.
Okay.
So I'm guessing that it's either going to be, if you enable that always running, always recording thing, it's locked to that time frame, or if you manually start recording, it's locked to that other one.
Okay. Yeah. So.
But in general, my feeling is, again, people threw up their hands and were like, "Oh my gosh, Sony's recording our conversations," and I'm like. Then again, I'm a person. You and I are people who work in this environment. Here's my thing, and I'm having this discussion with my kids because their school has enabled Gmail and instant messaging and all that stuff, and I'm like, it should be a foregone conclusion that if you are using somebody else's system that they own, that you don't own, and you don't own the service backbone of PlayStation, right, on which all this stuff is riding, you should always assume that some of their admins or all of their admins or numerous people with different permission sets have the ability at any point to go and grab snapshots, recordings, backups, logs of your activity and go through them. Right? That's like just You're operating on an IT system, assume that somebody else can get into it and then behave accordingly. But of course, in the 21st century, that is not how mankind operates for some reason, as people choose to say whatever the heck it is that they want to say, on instant messaging and platforms and voice comms, as if nobody will ever check. So the difference here is they've now put that power in the hands of other users to make it, because I think the way it used to work before is, I don't know if you remember, but I think it was last year or a couple years ago, and I didn't agree with the way this whole reporting went down, but I can't remember the company. I don't think it was Accenture. I think it was It may have been CSRA, but one of the big IT contracting firms, took a subcontract to Facebook, and they got all sorts of and Facebook got all sorts of bad press about it. The subcontract was for this pool of people whose responsibility was to moderate Facebook, and so there was all types of bad press about those people and what was being done to them and how they were being treated, and how, on a daily basis they had to moderate just hundreds of hours or millions of hours of video. And, there were all types of performance incentives and practices where, people were kept chained to their desks. There were reports of people who had chamber pots, because everybody was afraid to take a bathroom break. And if you took a bathroom break, then there was a hall monitor that would time you so that they knew, because all this was built around, hey, you have to, the contract vehicle between Facebook and that company was you have to moderate so many hours of video in a day. Again, working in and around that industry, what I try to tell people is that that's CSRA's practices, not Facebook's. Anyway, that's a different thing. So at any rate, but the point is that what used to happen is when you were like when I report you right for bad conduct, some human being has to go do the audit to find that behavior and then review it, right, and then take action. And I'm sure there's AI and ML and all sorts of stuff being put in place now. The difference now is that what they're saying is I can record that and send it in with my report, and all that means is that the human being who receives that now doesn't have to dig through a bunch of logs and audit to find that behavior with the time index of when you claim it, right? They get the artifact right then. And so hopefully what that means is that they can take action. So if you send me the recording and I review it and I determine that the recording is valid and your claim is valid, hopefully I can immediately ban that person right then and there, like within a number of hours of you reporting it, instead of what it used to be, which was maybe 24, 48, 72 hours by the time it hit somebody's queue and they had time to do the backwards engineering, forensics to find that actual artifact, is hopefully what it means.
Yeah, it'll be easier for everybody, hopefully. Yeah, I was just wondering too if because I think there's a new isn't there a new button on on the Xbox controller too, like a share button. I wonder if they're gonna do something similar or not. I thought there was a new share button, if I remember correctly.
There's a share button on the DualShock 4. I think that's what the PlayStation 4 controller is called. I just call it the PlayStation 4 controller. So, but there was a share button on the DualShock, and I'm pretty certain there's one on the PlayStation 5 controller as well. Whether or not they implement a separate control for this function, I'm not sure. If you can set it up in software or whatever, I don't know.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it's a good step forward, at least to kind of reporting these people. Like I said, it's not as cumbersome as it was before. So keeping with PlayStation still, we got their backwards compatibility, kind of more details on them. This is from the PlayStation blog, excuse me. I didn't get a chance to read this. I thought this was on one of the later articles, but I know they say here you get 99% of the PS4 games will be playable on PS5 day one. I thought it was a way less than that, though. I mean, from all the reports that we had heard leading up to this post.
Well, I think the thing has always been, it's, that claim that it was 99%. I will say personally, I've always looked at it as that's just a hand wave from a C-level officer who isn't actually down in the weeds and hasn't gone into an actual backwards compatibility playtesting lab and actually seen verification and validation conducted to know for certain without a doubt that this game is backwards compatible. And in a similar kind of occurrence on Xbox, where there are games that I kind of had automatically assumed were in Game Pass that you don't know aren't in Game Pass unless that actually comes up on your radar and you check. Forza 7 being one of them. So I'm just saying that there's an analog, right? The point being, if there's not a list, then people don't know. This is kind of the same, right? What it's been up to this date is Sony has made a claim, but there's been no list. Now we finally have the list, right? Where we say, as far as we understand, as far as we've tested, everything is backwards compatible with the exception of these games, right? And none of these are like AAA, like system seller games, or even ones that I would suspect, right, might be in a core gamer's lane and would be a particular gotcha, if you didn't know. Probably the most popular thing on here is probably, not even Hitman Go is the console port of a mobile game, so.
Yeah.
I don't see anything on here that is a big deal. Whereas with the Xbox analog, what I would say is, hey, if you're worried about, if I kept my PlayStation 2 back in the day until I bought my PlayStation 3 only so I could play Need for Speed Hot Pursuit 2. if something had happened, right, that was going to break that game on PlayStation 3, for instance, of backwards compatibility, that would have been the thing I would want to know. Because, I had my list of, like, these are my 10 games from last gen that I plan to take with me. And if your backwards compatibility framework isn't going to support that, then I don't hate you, right, for not accomplishing that. I hate you for not telling me. So now at least we have a list.
Yeah, and they kind of run through some more specifics here. There was one I was looking at right now. VR, all those games are backwards compatible according to this. Although PS4 or the PS Plus games will be backwards compatible. Anything you might have gotten on there. So, yeah. And then can you stream PS4 games on PS5? This says yes. And then also transfers, game transfers and game saves do work between, or will they work between the two consoles? And yes, you can transfer digital games, game data, and game saves from PS5 or PS4 to a PS5, either basically through your network, either using the LAN or Wi-Fi. So that's assuming you have both. I'm assuming though. So I don't really see if you can like pull down cloud saves. It doesn't really.
No, I'm pretty sure.
That. Oh, yeah.
I'm pretty sure you can.
Yeah. I'm sorry. Yeah, here it is, right here. Yeah. I was just making sure.
One interesting thing to note to make sure that you do know is if you are a big PSVR player, if that's a system-defining thing for you, PSVR on the PlayStation 5 will work, but you have to bring all of your, legacy PlayStation 4 accessories with you, including the camera. So, if you want the PlayStation 5 camera because it's more advanced and provides a better picture, maybe because you're planning on being a streamer and you want to be able to stream on your console, you can't afford or don't have like a dedicated streaming PC to stream those games. Just understand that if you have requirements for the PlayStation 5 camera, but you're also a PSVR player, that's probably not a huge demographic. But the point is, you would have to have both cameras, right? That PlayStation 4 one may not be the thing that you want to use for other stuff, but you have to have it in order to use the the Generation 1 version of the PSVR.
Okay. And then also they have a link here, so if you want to check out the whole list of which games will not be playable, they have a list there. Also, they will be labeled on the PlayStation Store as PS4 only. So now you know. So along with the breakdown of sorts of the backwards compatibility, there's also a article here on breakdown of the system itself. And I don't know if this guy's like really small or if the PS5 is really that big. I've never really seen. I mean, this thing looks huge compared to that guy. It's like as big as his torso.
Yeah, you may be seeing. I hope I forget what we put in the chat. You may be.
This is the Verge. This is from the Verge.com.
Oh no, this is right on the Verge. Yeah. No, yeah. It's that tall, and he's not, I forget what the name of the Chinese basketball player is, but he's not Mao or whatever. He's not super tall. Right? So he's not a big guy, but by the same token, that's a big console. Right? There's
a picture of like the fan. It's like he's huge. It's like it's bigger than his hand.
Right. Man. Right.
But I don't know. I'm sorry, I don't remember who put this article in. I don't know, maybe if this was you just because you're the hardware tech guy, but I don't know if there's anything from here that you want to kind of touch on real quick as far as the hardware itself.
I think the most telling thing here is it's kind of funny as I've and again what bugs me the most about I've been bothered with both console manufacturers and like things that we should have known at certain points in time. I will say, if I were scoring communications and transparency and openness with consumers, I would definitely unquestionably score Microsoft higher right now, just because they haven't let things linger and fester. Then you could talk about whether or not, who needed to be more open and transparent, whatever. Like the point is, if I'm looking at things in terms of certainty and like how much I know, right? I mean, this is. Stadia is my nearest analog, right? There was a certain point last year where I canceled my pre-order because there were questions about Stadia that I felt I hit a point on my timeline where I'm like, you guys should be able to answer these questions. Like it's like I can't believe, and I have to knowing how engineering works, I have to believe that you know, and the fact that you're not saying anything about it tells me that it's not good news, right? So I think what's pertinent from here, and again, I kind of laugh about the fact that no one who's a Sony fan has mentioned this as a point of, as an inconvenience or a negative, is that, much as I suspected, the expansion bay, access to the expansion bay for the NVMe drive for expanding the PlayStation's storage is internal. Right? It requires you to take off the side panels in order to access the drive, and it is not a hot swap bay. I haven't seen the instructions on this, but where I see it's located and how it looks like you have to install the NVMe drive, you're installing a bare NVMe drive. This is not Microsoft's version of the expansion card slot with a little ejection switch on it, right? So as far as I can tell, this is a thing that you're going to have to pull off the side panels, access the bay, insert your NVMe drive, and once it's in there, it's in there. And if you want to swap it, you're going to have to completely shut down your PlayStation 5, flip the power switch if it's got a power switch, unplug the thing, open the case, and pull the drive out and reinstall the new drive, which is just laborious. Now, some people are going to say that, well, that's, there's no way in the world that you need more than 2 terabytes of storage, right? Because, there's 1 terabyte on board, and theoretically you would expand it with another 1 terabyte drive. Again, I'm a person of convenience. When I want to play the thing at a random drop of the hat, I just want the thing there. And so last generation, all of my consoles, I had the 1 terabyte drive, and then I had a 3 terabyte, 4 terabyte, or larger drive attached to it.
Yeah, external.
As external, because you could play off the external drive.
Yeah.
The way this product is set up, where the scenario it would drive for me is, for instance is on the original PlayStation, I got to a point where I swapped before the USB drives were supported, because PlayStation 4 didn't support USB drives out of the gate.
Yep.
I swapped out the original 1 terabyte drive with a 2 terabyte drive. Now, then they enabled USB support. Now, when I got my PlayStation 4 Pro, when I neared the 1 terabyte limit, I said, am I gonna swap it out with a larger capacity drive, or am I just gonna go straight to USB? I just went straight to USB because I didn't feel like dealing with the hassle of swapping out the drive. And here's the thing, swapping out the hard drive, the hassle isn't the physical swap out. The hassle that I saw was on the original PlayStation. Sony's instructions for installing an entirely new version of the operating system were very bad, and so I wound up spending some amount of time banging my head against the wall, because the download link that drove you to think that's where you got the software was actually the download link for the patch. But they didn't, right? So when you read their instructions, all of their instructions were pertinent to, I don't even know how or why you would do this, but reinstalling the software on a hard drive that already had the software on it and just needed the patch. The instructions for installing it fresh from a ground up, were further down on the page, so you wouldn't get to them until you'd already made the mistake. Which I didn't. I was like, why would you not put the fresh drive instructions at the top? The point is I don't think of Sony as a software company. I think of Microsoft as a software company. And my point is that dealing with Sony PlayStation software has, bitten me more than once, and so when I approached it the second time, I just was like, I'm not dealing with them and their software instructions, right? I'll just use the 1 terabyte drive on the PS4 Pro and go to external. This generation, things are different. Using an external drive is not really a viable option. So with the fact that I have to access this expansion drive, and in PC terms, this is not an expansion drive to me. This is a second hard drive slot. And so just like when I buy a gaming laptop that has a spare hard drive mount point, that's how I have to kind of think about it. And so again, I go, for that expansion slot, am I getting a 1 terabyte drive? But more than likely, I probably target a 2 terabyte drive. How much is a 2 terabyte drive? for PlayStation with its need of having bandwidth that has sufficient throughput to meet the PlayStation 5 spec. That's probably not a $230 NVMe like the one Samsung just put out at double capacity. That's probably a $400 or $500 drive, right?
Yeah.
Now again, everybody who laughs at the Microsoft implementation of the proprietary SSD, now I think you have a different quantification to look at and compare, right? In terms of who has a more convenient upgrade path for additional storage.
Yeah, definitely easier.
Right.
Man, that heatsink is huge on that thing. Good Lord.
Right.
I'm just skipping through the video.
Right. And I saw
tearing it apart.
And I saw somebody, joke, sarcastically on Twitter about, oh, that'll be no problem for all the Sony PlayStation owners who also own PCs. I'm sure that they swap out NVMe drives all the time. Obviously sarcastic. Microsoft Xbox owners, probably a very large percentage of them comparatively are also PC gamers, right? And this is if you present them an NVMe drive to do an install in, it's it's whatever, right? They have probably done it before, but I suspect you have a larger percentage of the PlayStation gaming demographic who does not concurrently play on PC, and this is going to be an additional thing to them. Not insurmountable, not problematic. However, if you do something wrong installing an NVMe drive, it's a delicate piece of hardware, right? You're not necessarily going to get a second chance to screw that up, right? In addition to that, the way those things come packaged and the way you have to install them, they have to be ESD handled, right? So electrostatic discharge. So you have to install them, in a certain area with a certain setup so that you don't zap the hard drive and ruin it.
Yeah, it's. I remember those days where I had to pull apart laptops. Desktops, not so bad, obviously, because you got more space. But laptops, and these are a little bit bigger than a laptop, but still, I mean, you got everything's all so compact. Like I'm watching this guy take this thing apart, just kind of skipping through here, and it's just, man, you screw one little thing, any little thing up, and you're, your system might not boot correctly, or it might not, you'll have rattling, or something's gonna go wrong.
Well, and to be fair, you don't have to do what this guy is doing to install the NVMe drive. You only have to take off the side panels, and I think one other piece. It might be that fan cowl or fan cover, but there's like 3 pieces total, maybe just 2 that you have to take off in order to access the drive bay. So the disassembly isn't that hard. To me, it's just the fact that it's not a hot. The big thing is that it's not a hot swap. This isn't something that I can just buy drives. Sorry, and on the fly, right, pop them out.
Right.
So and again, it's where the things are available. So NVMe drives are not just hanging on the store shelf at GameStop, right? I mean, they might be at Best Buy. But the low yields and low supply that's going to be available, these are things you have to go on to Amazon and order, right? So again, it's not a huge problem, but it makes a difference when I need a thing and that thing is available at Best Buy and I can hit that on my way home from work versus the things that are only available when I mail order them, right, or order them online through Amazon. If I hit that speed bump on a Friday night, right, or on a Saturday, or at a point where it's difficult for me to get a thing, or going into a 3-day weekend when mail is disrupted by the holiday, right? So
yeah, there are more factors.
Right. This is not a thing where you're going to wake up in the morning, decide you want to buy Call of Duty, realize that it goes over your hard drive limit, decide you want to fix that problem before you get into the weekend, and just plan on picking up a stinking PCIe 4.0 NVMe drive from GameStop, right? That's not going to happen. So, whereas if you're on an Xbox Series X and you go, hey, I need another 1 terabyte of storage, probably just going to be able to stop in a Best Buy and get that.
Yeah, actually, another thing too I didn't realize is you can actually, out for the Xbox side, you can actually store the Series X and S games on like an external, but you can't play it. But then you can just flip it over to the, it's transferred over to the console, which that's kind of nice, I guess. I mean, it's kind of a pain that you have to, I'm sure the transfer is not instantaneous, I'm assuming, but it's pretty nice you can do that.
Yeah. It's a thing. It's managing files, right? Which is, again, it's a thing that I would prefer not to do, but you're absolutely right. If you had to do it, That's again a better option than saying I need to order a thing from Amazon and it'll be here in 2 days.
Yeah, and take certain
right,
things apart.
right. What's interesting and what's interesting in terms of how that's going to play out is, and I know what the companies are saying. I I don't know for certain, and I'm not convinced that there's going to be hard stops, right? So I've heard things like even if you store if you're on a Series X and you store an Xbox Series X game external, you can even then still play it, but you just won't play it with the Xbox Series X enhancements, right? So it'll come across looking like an Xbox One X game, for instance. So the devil's in a lot of those details, and certain things that I've heard, don't true up with the way, right? I mean, if it can be stored and it can't be played there's got to be a certain right. There's got to be a software interlock there that prevents you from playing the game, right? Whereas the way it's said, the way I've heard Microsoft articulate it, I have not seen a Microsoft statement that says you cannot play the game there. What I have seen, admittedly, it's a little mealy mouthed, right? Talking about both sides. What I've seen is Microsoft articulate you don't want to play the game there, or you won't be able to play the game with all of the enhancements. But what I hear from that is I don't hear binary 0 or a 1, true or false. You're not going to be able to play it. In order to play the game, you have to play it. I keep hearing, in order to play the game with all of the next generation implementations that we've been advertising to you, you want to play it on either the internal or one of these expansion cards. So I'll be curious to see if you can actually play games on the external, but you just don't get all of the enhancements with them. Because again, that would make it different, right? If I can actually play the game on an external, and I don't want to stop at GameStop, right? I want to go ahead and order. That makes a big difference, because I get up on a Friday, I probably order an SSD card, and I just play the game for a couple of days, right? With the Xbox visuals, and 2 days later I move it to an SSD, right? So it just makes a difference in in the logistics of how exactly I might handle that.
Yeah, I mean that's true. I mean, you might just get. I mean, I guess the biggest thing with that too is just like the load time thing is what they're promoting, as a big deal for the new hard drives and stuff. I mean, obviously there's whole other things there, but that's probably the major thing you're going to see is just like the load times and stuff. And obviously graphics are going to be impacted, but I mean, if you're playing on the X already, you're probably used to it, I suppose. So, I mean, I don't see what the big deal is until you can find, like you said, until you can find that bigger drive.
Right. And, what I've said about these load times, I kind of threw up my hands and got a little frustrated the other day because I'm like, I mean, so the way my experience went with moving to SSDs on a PC is, once load times and boot times and all that stuff were under like 60 seconds and then like under 30 seconds, the difference between something taking 30 seconds to load versus 16 seconds to load, there's a certain point where it all becomes diminishing returns. Like that incrementally faster than thing, like I don't care about. It's really kind of, it's all a matter of, is it so long that it warrants me getting up from my chair and going to get coffee, use the bathroom, put the dog out, whatever, right? If I feel like in the course of getting up from my chair, I'm going to see the screen change, right, before I walk away from it, that's what keeps me anchored there, and right? And so that threshold, once you fall below a certain point, like the incremental difference in that doesn't matter to me. And so there are all these articles about, all this wailing and gnashing of teeth online about, oh, well, it's 21 seconds versus 31. That's not like, right. You're going to, when you go through that experience, you're going to see that it doesn't matter. So to me, I don't know, it's, I think, like I said, I think once you get below a certain threshold, it's not going to be as important. And what I'm much more strenuously saying now is like, enough. We've heard about the faster load times. You're both doing it. I now say that it's a commodity between the two of you. It doesn't make a competitive difference, right? We're we're not putting you in the game of the year category because your load times are faster, right? Like, okay, right? This is kind of like the other article that I saw the other day about the coalition and like or is it the initiative, and like the fact that they've hired somebody like you guys have been telling us since 2018 that you hired somebody new. I don't care, right? So my point is there's lots of news coming out about these articles that we've heard 99 bajillion times, and I'm just like, okay.
I mean, if it was like 2 or 3 seconds, that's something. But even when I first heard the fast load time, it's like, oh, it's fast load times, and then they're like, oh yeah, it's like 15 seconds. I'm like, oh, okay,
right.
it's ridiculous, kind of ridiculous. It's not really faster, really. I mean, if you think about it, but you're still gonna be sitting there waiting. But it's still important, I suppose.
And you're absolutely right. And all of it is this topic and discussion around how's it doing loading current gen games. That doesn't necessarily look. Games are going to continue getting bigger. They're going to continue getting more complex. Developers are going to continue eating away at every ounce of performance that you give to them, except the certain things that they should really use, like hyperthreading and SLI. But that's a different topic that I'm sore about. But the things that they use, they'll continue eating into. So, by the midpoint of this generation, nobody's going to be talking about levels loading in 15 seconds because they're not, right? Because the levels are they're going to get bigger and people are going to use. So yeah.
All right, let's finish out the console wars with some more hardware. Actually, some drifting issues. Obviously, we've heard I just closed on the article. I didn't want to. Drifting from from Nintendo side. From the JoyCons on the Switch, and if you don't know what drift is, obviously when you're sitting there, you leave the stick alone. The character might be moving still, up or down, left or right, whatever, on the screen still, when they should be sitting still. But now looks like we have, and maybe you can attest to this, Agasicles, the Xbox Elite Series 2 is potentially having issues. According to this article from TechSpot.com, there is a faulty potentiometer, how do you say that word?
Potentiometer.
Okay, thank you. Which is causing the issue, and they're saying basically that Microsoft knew about this, but obviously still selling them out there. So basically, what's happening is after basically around the 90-day mark, or when your 90-day warranty is about to expire, that's what happens. I'm sure that happens with a lot of products here and there, but I know you have an Elite Series 2. Have you had an issue? I don't know how long have you had it now, actually.
I haven't, and I should mention, if it makes it easier, we often in systems and electrical engineering, we often call those pots or pot. If we're calling one. So in field engineering, we often just call those pots. So I have it, and it's funny because a couple weeks ago, I think we were on a GX episode, and we talked about how you and I both do this thing of, if we have 6, 7, 8 controllers for a system, we rotate amongst all of them. This is why, right? This is why. Maybe that problem is there, but as long as I can avoid that issue, I don't want to be bothered with it. I don't want to have to send my controller back and deal with all those gymnastics. So, I've got 6 or 7 Xbox controllers just that I've collected over time, and I'm going to use each one 1/7 of the time. And I may never see this issue on my Elite controller. I firmly believe, it's definitely, and not to say they're doing anything wrong, but it's probably most likely, obviously, seen by people who are using that controller every single day. I'm putting a lot of wear and tear on it. So
yeah.
But yeah, no, I haven't seen this yet. I did believe that I saw Nintendo Joy-Con drift. And again, that's why that has led to the practice now of on my Switch, I never use anything other than the Pro controller.
Yeah, I've had the Pro controller. I bought it with the system when I bought the system, and I haven't had any issues with that one. So I have had issues with a couple of actually more than a couple, but one pair of Joy-Cons I actually did send in because you can get them repaired for free if you go to the website and put in a ticket and all that. But some of the other ones, I actually got another pair too that I need to send in, but some of the other ones seem to be fine. So I mean, I don't know. It's like, I guess, like you say, it's how often you use it. I had the first series Elite controller, and I've had that one now for 3 years or so now, and it seems to be working okay. And that's pretty much exclusively I've been using that one pretty much this whole time now. So I don't know if there's a downgrading quality or if it just happens to be this one controller, but this gentleman or a lady is having an issue with, and I'm just trying to find the name. I don't know if they actually say the name of the person, but probably not. They just offended. So we'll see what happens. Obviously, like I said, with Nintendo, you can get those repaired for free. So I'm assuming if this keeps happening, maybe that'll happen with the Series 2. We'll see what happens in the future. I guess because we're over on time here, was there anything in the next section in the upgrade updates to the free-to-play Battle Royale multiplayer games that you wanted to hit real quick?
No, I mean I do. It would be really great to talk about all of them because I think some of them are really
there's a lot of them.
pertinent. Like the Call of Duty eating your hard drive thing is a thing that I personally run into, and I would love to rant about that. But unfortunately, I think we're running short on time. So yeah, I'm fine if we wrap up.
Okay. Yeah, there's nothing really there. I did want to talk about the a la carte one, but that's all right. We'll skip.
Yeah, no, why don't you go ahead and hit that one, and then we'll go ahead and punch out of here after we do the outro and picks plays and all that stuff.
Okay, so this is actually just an article that just came out today. Not just an article, but an announcement for the official full list of Xbox Series S and X launch day titles. I don't think there had ever been really. I mean, individual games I think had come out. That they were coming out, but there wasn't like hey, this is the full list that's coming out. So it was about 30 games, I believe. I'm not going to go through them all, but obviously we have Assassin's Creed Valhalla. We got Bright Memory 1.0, which is one of the games I believe they showed on their third-party conference or digital thing that they did. We got Dirt 5. We have the Falconeer, which I'm not sure what that is. Fortnite, which is their upgraded. I'm assuming ray tracing and all that. I know PS5 is having that one too on launch day. Upgrade to Gears 5, Gears Tactics, is coming out. Grounded, which is actually already out on Game Preview. Let's see, a couple of other ones. Planet Coaster console edition's coming out. I believe that's a launch title. I'm not sure if that's coming out for everything, but it might be on other things right now. We got Warhammer Chaos Bane Slayer Edition, Watch Dogs Legion, Yakuza Like a Dragon, which is the next installment on the Yakuza series, which I'm kind of excited for. I still got to finish a couple of the other ones, or the 3 other ones that are in Game Pass. And then we have Yes, Your Grace. A lot of these have the smart delivery, so they are going to be on Xbox S, the current Xbox One X and S systems. And then obviously, if you buy them there, you can upgrade them for free or get them for free on the Xbox Series X and S. Anything here that jumps out at you? I mean, obviously, you're probably not going to get one on launch day, I don't think, or at least I don't think you are.
No, but I'll still be part of the commentary, and I'll still evaluate the launch shenanigans as someone who has done so for some number of decades. What I will say is, lest I be accused of only favoring Microsoft, right? I will say in plain truth, right? What's sitting here is, as you mentioned, I think it's about 30 titles total.
Yeah.
So it's a little higher than normal launch windows. I think Xbox One and PlayStation 4 were 19 to 21 titles apiece, which I think is generally what we see. And admittedly, a vast majority of these are last generation titles that are being redeployed. So to be quite honest, right, straight up, right, if I were buying one and I were looking for, generally when I buy a new console each generation, I've generally targeted, buying the console and 3 new games. My normal package would normally be the console, an extra controller, and 3 new games. There's only really, and that would have changed this console generation because I am, invested in things like Destiny 2 and Fortnite and Call of Duty Modern Warfare, right? So those games that I already own, there'd be a healthy amount of playing them on the new system. But if I were in the old paradigm, there's really only 3 games here that kind of sort of, I'll say, matter, right? Assassin's Creed Valhalla. I had these before. Assassin's Creed Valhalla, Watch Dogs Legion, and Dirt 5, right? Those are 3 brand new games which are releasing concurrently, roughly with the hardware set. And they're the only 3 that are really that to me are are triple A or in my interest window and are for this new hardware. Right now, Falconeer is a next gen game ish. You know, and there are some smaller games here, but you know, again, if I'm looking for those three big titles that make me feel like they justify the money I've spent in securing a Series X, those are the three titles I would go for. Um, what I think is always interesting, you know, when I look at this list though, is you know we'll see how people talk about it is the comparison, right? Because one console camp or the other will try and have its fans claim that there's more release titles, and like I frequently I've had to walk this back this generation twice, right? Which is first was when PlayStation 4 and Xbox One launched, and the PlayStation camp tried to claim that they had a healthier launch window, and I'm like, the vast majority of your guys' launch window games are all indie games, which were available on the PC a year to 2 years ago, and there's a certain demographic of consumer who have already played all those. So those don't count, right? And I'm like, when I discount those, your guys' launch window number is roughly the same as Xbox One. So don't give me that you have a healthier thought, right? Don't tell me that you have a healthier launch window lineup because you have Resogun, right? So there's that. But then I also had to walk it back when Stadia launched, right? And a lot of people tried to say, oh, well, the Stadia launch with, you know, game library is so much less that I'm like, revisionist history, look back at the 19 to 21 titles that released for Xbox One and PlayStation 4, and they're the same as Stadia launched with, right? And exactly the same thing. Tons of those games are already released on previous platforms, right? So roughly those launch window libraries were roughly the same. You know, this one is actually a little more robust than we've seen in the past. It'll be interesting. I'm pretty sure the PlayStation 5 one is already out, but I haven't run the head-to-head direct comparison yet.
Yeah, I was kind of looking at that one right now on IGN's kind of wiki guide for PS5, and they have a lot of the same games. Assassin's Creed, Devil May Cry Special Edition, Godfall, which I don't think that was on the Xbox's list.
Yeah, which is weird. So, I thought for certain Godfall was because Godfall's a Gearbox game. I thought it was absolutely. Oh, you know what? That may be a timed PlayStation exclusive.
Yeah, I think it is going to come to Xbox eventually. Yeah, but yeah. But it looks like it's a launch for PlayStation. You got Fortnite, Maneater, which I believe is that's the shark game, right? Where you're the shark, you play as the shark.
Right.
I think. Yeah. NBA 2K11, The Pathless, Watch Dogs Legion. So yeah, there's a lot of crossovers. They have a lot of. They probably have more first-party games. You got Spider-Man, Sackboy's Big Adventure, Destruction All Stars, Demon Souls, which I believe is a remake, and then Astro's Playroom. So for first-party stuff, but I mean, it's all gonna pretty much equal out. And plus, you got all the backwards compatibility stuff on both systems. So I mean, you're pretty well set. I don't think you're gonna have enough to play on.
Yeah, this is kind of I really feel like the discussion about launch window libraries for this console release are really irrelevant, right? Because of the backwards compatibility. And again, it's a 6 or 1/2 dozen the other, but I gotta say, if you're going with Xbox, if you have to make the choice, right? Which again, my biggest advocacy is that the world would be great if it were a place where people didn't have to make these choices and you could get both. But if you're going with Xbox, the upside is you can be an Xbox Game Pass subscriber and you can have whatever your old library is, whatever launch window games you want to buy, plus whatever is available there, on Xbox. Now you could do PlayStation Now if you were on PlayStation. The only downside to that value proposition is that I'm not as pleased about the fact that there's not a PC implementation available, service tier available for that. And let me say, there's not a 1080p service level for PlayStation Now. If you do PlayStation Now and you get it delivered to PC, you get 720p games. And I'm like, why am I going to pay for that to have 720p delivered to my 165 hertz, monitor? Like what? So.
Yeah. That's the point. Yeah. But like I said, I'm still waiting on this console generation, so we'll see what happens. few months down the line or so, when I finally do get, I will eventually get a Series X or S or X, but we'll see. I'm sure. I mean, there'll be plenty to play either way. So, all right. So to close up tonight's fully packed show we had tonight, let's jump into what we're going to do our picks plays on for the next GX episode. Many of us have dabbled and sometimes dived into free-to-play games. Right here, we got Fortnite, we got World of Tanks and Warships were frequently mentioned this year. Another show, on another show, we have Rocket League that just went free to play. And Genshin Impact is grabbing headlines this week, actually past couple weeks. So what we're going to do is choose a free-to-play game you haven't tried and see how the onboarding is, see how many layers of the systems for currency are leveling, and do you hit a paywall eventually or not. So I am going to be playing Vigor, which is on the Switch. Kind of an open world game as far as I can tell right now, that as far as I've played. DBQ is going to play Path of Exile and Black Desert. And then you, I guess, these are going to play Destiny 2. So please check out our episode next week, which is the GX show, hosted by Agasicles and Osiris, with myself, Osiris Prime, and DB is going to be jumping in also as co-hosts. Any last words, Agasicles?
Nope, I'm good.
All right, cool. Well, thanks for watching. This has once again been the Enough to Keep Going podcast, episode number 165. Please take care of each other out there. Be safe and play those games. Good night.
Maya